this computer and say, hi, everybody. This is Joe Maldonado. I am headmaster at Griffin's Claw, the School of Practical Magic. And I have with me today on this wonderful interview day, two very popular social media dog trainers, Kat and Crystal, or professors, Kat and Crystal. So you guys, I have personally been following you for years, I think, before we actually met. And it was about 4 years ago when I started training my dog, Coda, to be a service dog. And I found you guys, I think, on Instagram. And you had tell me how many followers you had on Instagram?
I think our highest was 12,000 at one point.
Yeah, when Saxon was when it was his main page, we had around 12,000.
Yeah, we didn't even have our own company or anything at the time. It was Saxon who had 12,000 followers.
Right.
Yeah.
Just tell everybody, what kind of things did you train Saxon to do? Of course, he's a service dog, because your company, Expanding Intelligence, does service dog training, and that's the two of you. And then there are a group of other people also that, volunteers that help you with the dogs and puppy raisers and so on. But tell me what you started, what kind of stuff did you start Saxon doing when you guys would go out?
Well, Saxon, he started with just behavioral type of things. We had to correct that before we were able to move into some of the more complex stuff like wand holding, or if you want to talk task work, then like holding things for me for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, but not only that, but he had to be reliable when it comes to trusting him in all situations. So if she's passed out and he's there by himself, is he going to be capable of handling himself in the environment around him? If there's a dog that walks by, if there's a person that's calling him over and things like that. So it's really getting them used to every environment, every situation. And
once we did that, his strongest thing was blood sugar alert. He could tell me before my blood sugar dropped. Give me time.
So what would he do when your blood sugar would drop? And also, I just wanted to say to everybody that as we're talking, there should be a little box on there so you could chat. There's like an icon with a chat icon on it. So feel free, I'm going to start it off and just say hello, everyone. Just go ahead and send your questions through the chat box. So I'm sorry, go ahead. So tell me, what kind of things would he do? Like if your blood sugar would drop, what does he do?
Blood sugar alert specifically was to paw at me. We don't teach our dogs to give paw for any reason, because too many people ask for that in public and then it gets mixed up between an alert. It's just too common. So he would specifically paw for blood sugar. He'd put his head in my lap or boop my hand for high cortisol, which is alerting before panic or like high anxiety.
When the body is stressed, it releases the chemical cortisol, so it could be related to a lot of different things. So that's when we ask them to target which one it is and then give that specific notification. So
how would you train something like that? Like for him to recognize that, her blood sugar is off. How do you train for something like this?
It's a lot of scent training. So whenever you're stressed out like that, when you get to that amount of intensity with anxiety or PTSD, the chemicals are released and you can get them through the saliva in your tongue. So you want to get a cotton swab, swab it, and get as much saliva as you can on it, and then freeze it, and you can use that as your training tool.
It's best to put it in a jar to preserve it.
Do you put that in a refrigerator then?
A freezer.
In a freezer. Okay. So like a plastic bag. I'm just thinking.
Better to be a jar.
Yeah, because
it won't crack. It won't explode in your freezer when you do that.
No, we like to use the mason jars with the little holes on the top, so that you can change them out for when you need it, so that you don't have to touch it at all. That's the point of the glass and everything, so you don't have to touch it and mix any smells that will go into the.
So when you're having an episode of a sugar change, for example, or whatever it is, you put a cotton ball in your mouth and you
I would check the level, because there's a level that everybody has a certain number of like amount to where they start feeling symptomatic or to
Or
where
panic.
they'll pass out, because some people can pass out from low blood sugar even, or when a migraine comes on. So all of that is within a certain amount of time. So you would take it at a time when it's before those things are happening, and then when those things are happening, and then when they're at their worst, and you want swabs of all those things.
Yeah, you'll start out with the one that's most intense because obviously that'll have the most intense smell on it.
Do you like label your jars like most
Exactly,
intense?
yeah.
Okay.
And
You
we also
date them, right? And then you put them in a freezer.
exactly. So like for blood sugar and stuff, we would actually test it and see what the blood sugar was at and
Okay.
pop the saliva at the time and then put the label how much what the number was
We
at.
would check my vitals. We would even do a blood pressure at the time, like on the jar, it would say like what my blood pressure, heart rate, and glucose level was, so that we knew which thing we were training with every time. Because we can't mix that up. If my heart rate was super high at the time too, then that would
Interfere a little bit. Yeah.
So that would that make it his alert more intense because your heart rate was really off?
Exactly.
Yes, but when you're trying to shape an alert, like how I said, Saxon specifically pawed for blood sugar. If I'm teaching that I want you to boot my hand if my heart rate is high, and then I'm teaching for them to paw with my low blood sugar, but my heart rate was also high, then I'm shaping both to be the same alert when I'm meaning to separate it. Does that make sense?
Yes. So your freezer is like full of jars.
Basically,
Yeah.
I could just see like rows and rows of jars, and they all have dates and they have information on them. So you start out with, and of course you're validated with the scientific end of it by taking, you know, your own vitals and so on, and putting that in a label. So they're actually small jars, right? Because I mean, you know, all alerts, all these symptoms are going to be different every time, I would think. You know, one point the pressure will be up, and then, you know, the sugar would be down, and could be the other way, or both could be up or both down, right?
Exactly.
So, oh my gosh. So the people that are living with you, it's like, oh, let's get something to eat at night. They open up the freezer, and here's like, oh, Kathy's blood pressure and her saliva.
We have a second fridge for medical stuff.
I would think you probably do. And how long does that hold, like when you put it in the freezer?
Good question. So the shelf life is only like 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, to get the most amount from it, which is why it's good to always switch it out and to get
fresh samples.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and how long does it take for him to actually catch on to, like, let's just do the first task of the most intense symptoms that are really smelly good for him, right? I mean, how long would it take for him to catch on that, oh, now he has to alert to them?
For Saxon, you mean specifically?
It depends on every dog, you know, like how fast they'll get it, depending on the breed too, if they're natural scent detection dogs, kind of thing. So Saxon actually picked it up pretty fast, and he started to pick it up on his own. So that's really when we shaped it and we started getting the samples to make sure to see that his alerts were in line with what he was doing. And that's really what started us into the scent training and stuff, was because he was already naturally picking up on it. And that's something that a lot of people don't notice too with their dogs at home, is that they're there to comfort them whenever they're upset or something, but they get up and put pressure on the chest, which is actually a task that we teach. Like cats do that a lot. They're very in tune with people. So this is something that a lot of people don't realize their dogs even are picking up on naturally. So it could be as soon as the first session, it could take a few months. It just depends.
It could not happen at all, but it depends.
So do you have different signals that you've trained him then for different things? Like blood pressure would be one thing, sugar would be another. Okay, so if you can identify what his different ways of communicating with you are.
Yeah, so blood sugar is paw, and then something like cortisol would be head in my lap. It's a more
subtle response. It's a lot like the high heart rate response, but just subtle version of it.
How do you test for cortisol?
Huh?
How do you test for cortisol?
You breathe in their face, and once they already know it and everything, and so you can ask them to check. If you start blowing in their direction and they're not even paying attention, and they look up and they come immediately and start to alert to you, then that's how you know that something's going on.
But I mean, how would I know that my cortisol is up? How would I know it?
It's if you're stressed. So it's
Okay.
released when the body is under stress. So if you're in a lot of pain, if you're if you're in a verge of
Okay.
panic attack, like you're
Yeah.
there,
Okay.
that's when it's hitting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's when you should start blowing in their face.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
or
Give them like, because I've got Enoch trained, with the head on the lap. So if I wanted her to do that, okay, so she should be able to at some point tell that that's coming on before I even do, correct? Is that
and
the
that,
focus?
yeah, and that's why when we do scent training with the swabs or the cotton ball, whatever we use, it's like that's what makes their time to be able to tell before it happens. It makes it faster, and gives you more time, because then they start picking up on the smell. They know what to smell, and they're getting more practice with what they're looking for. So they get faster and faster every time.
And we try to make it a game for them. So it's like, can you beat the clock? Can you tell us that this is happening before it happens? So we kind of make that the mentality in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have head on the lap, and then we have paw, and then what other things would he or would they?
Boop
You have
the
multiple
hand.
dogs.
He has to specifically find my hand to like move or boop if something's coming on where I'm going to. That's really the meltdown mode type of alert. It's the let's get out of here, and you should also get on the floor so I can provide pressure immediately.
It's usually when she's most overwhelmed. So like sensory overload kind of thing. Like she's just standing there shifting, doesn't know what to do, and he's like, you got to get out of here. And it's like refocusing her in. The wetness of his nose touching her palm, it's such a sensitive area that it catches her attention, and she looks down and realizes it, and then they leave.
Okay, so does he take her out?
Yeah.
How
So
does he do that? Like if you don't have a leash, how does he do that then?
Well, we have on our service dog harness, there's a handle on it. It's not one of the bigger guide handles, but it is sturdy enough just to do guiding like that.
Yeah.
So when they're wearing their vest and they're out, they have something if they are off leash for me to hold on to. Yeah.
Okay.
And then if she's on the verge of like passing out, and she's like, I know my heart rate's been high, you don't have to keep telling me, but he's being persistent with it, then that's at the point where he'll jump up. He won't put too much pressure on her.
Well,
he'll
that's
just
Fresno,
kind of stand up. Yeah.
But Saxon, since he was for more heavier mobility, he would stand in front of me and actually like
block her from moving.
He would be like, no, we're gonna stay put right here, and he would push his body like we're not moving. And Fresno's not.
That's a good point. I know for large dogs, like for Coda, for example, who is like 115 plus or minus, maybe 120 or so, and she's a large girl, but she would do that also. Now that you brought it up, and I never trained her to do that. I trained her to stand front, but when she feels something like that coming on with you, and she just does it automatically. She comes and then she blocks me from going anywhere else. So now, if you're on the ground and you don't know what's going on, for example, what do you have the dogs trained to do at that point? And there's no one around to help. Do they?
If I can speak, if I'm able to at that time, I can ask for the dog to find help or to find Crystal specifically, or whoever.
So when you say, do you say the words "go find help" or "go get help"?
If I can, yeah.
And what do they do at that point?
They would normally go to a person. We have some handlers. I'm always around cats, so we don't have this issue. It's usually just to find me. But with people who aren't around the same person all the time, then they normally have like a wristband that they'll wear, and they'll take it off, and it says, "Please follow my handler." So the dog will bring it up.
Oh, wow.
Grab it, look at it, and go, "Oh, I have to follow this dog," and then the dog will bring them back to the person.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So that's like a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time. I would get, my guess is about 2 years to have a dog fully trained to do all those things. Is that correct?
Yes. Depending on, the type of, like alert dogs are longer.
It depends on the person and their needs and everything like that.
Right. So if I had a dog like Enoch, for example, she's done multiple surgeries and is still breathing and walking. Okay. If I had a dog that you have both been working with, like anybody, I'm saying if anybody has a dog, and they wanted to have this dog trained to do that, is there a certain criteria that you test for? before you take that dog on as a client and start training them?
Yeah, so we like to go through the Bohart temperament test. It just tests their just how they are in social situations, loud noises, just
What they're willing to do already.
if they follow you, their reaction to like throwing items. Will they go fetch it? Are they interested in it, or are they kind of scared by? You're always kind of looking by, are they nervous about this, or are they ready, tail up, and we want to go investigate it, and that's what we look for.
For example, like we open the umbrella, we have like a water bottle that's really loud, and we crunch it around to see if they're scared of those kinds of things, because when you're out in public, you run into all kinds of noises and sounds.
Touch the tail, the paws, make sure that none of those things cause a reaction that could be as mild to like fear or just reacting in a seemingly angry way.
Yeah, because if we're in public, kids, as much as we don't want them to come up and pet the dogs, there's always one kid that comes along and pets the back of the dog when we can't see it. So we need to make sure that the dog is okay with that kind of reaction, because it's very inappropriate to have a reactive dog when it comes to touch.
Even though you have a whole bunch of labels. So I've seen a lot of service dogs with like, I don't know, just a bunch. It's like the whole vest is plastered. Do not touch me, don't look at me, and all that. No eye contact, and all that kind of stuff. I know it's bound to happen. So if we can, anybody have any questions on, on this kind of training, please go ahead and type in your question. And I just want to say, so you have to, number one, and correct me if I'm wrong in the order, have to make sure that the dog is the proper kind of candidate to do the kind of tasks that you want to have done for you, because they're life-saving tasks, basically. I mean, anything wrong can happen. So that's number one. So you assess the dog. And number two, there's training, and there's like, before the actual training of task work comes in, you have to make sure that they're not going to be receptive to loud noises and crowds and things like that. So there's that kind of training. And of course there's, the ability to kind of think on their own, so I guess that would come into the testing part. So then after you do all that, I know one of the things that I loved following you guys when I first followed you before I met you actually was just seeing Saxon do like really funky stuff, like picking up trash at Universal and putting it in the trash container. So if you can just tell us a little bit about that. So if you got a dog, so the dog is like naturally picking up things and bringing it to you, like a kind of like a fetch type of thing. How do you get from that point to pointing to a trash can? And then we have a couple of questions coming in. How to going to the trash can and putting the bottle, the empty bottle, into the trash can. How do you do that?
Well, it's a fun one.
Yeah, we'll start to put our hand into the trash can for them to drop it into like your hand.
First, you have to, start with motivating them to come towards the trash can, make sure they're good with the trash can.
Well, yeah, if they can hold the item and walk to the trash can, then you proceed with putting your hand over it, and then eventually you'll remove your hand, and you have that paired command to drop it in or to throw it away. Some people use different words for it. So you remove your hand and you have the command there. So then drop it in.
You kind of have to do steps with it, so it's like little by little. So first they have to be able to hold it, then they have to be able to hold it and walk, then they have to be able to hold it, walk, and jump, and then they have to be able to drop it. So it's like you go very slowly with each thing, but each time they get it, you try it 2 or 3 times, make sure they understand the next step, and then you add the next one. So you go at their pace. Some dogs are fast, some dogs are slow, but they get there. So we have Jackson throwing away bottles in the recycle bin instead of the regular one now when we go to parks and stuff. So
nice. And I know he does, your dogs in general, and dogs you have, do simple things like, booping the buttons to open the doors so they can go into the mall or the stores or Universal or, Disney or wherever you are. So is that just the touch command and you pointing to where you want them to touch? Is that how that's transferred over to that?
We teach them to look before they retrieve something or before they touch something or just anything like that. So then when they look at the right thing, we say yes and then touch. So it's like a couple steps in there to look for the right thing. Okay, you targeted the button. Yes, go touch. And
Okay.
So like
Do you give a name to each thing, or do you just point?
Well, no, it's usually just to touch, and sometimes we use our hand, so we'll put our hand in front of it first to have them touch our hand, and then we'll remove our hand and tell them to touch that spot.
Okay, good.
To kind of show them, and if they don't get it, I'll put my hand back, touch, okay, touch, kind of like little movements like that.
We do have names for some things that we don't have to tell them to look for.
Like close the door. They'll go and close the door for, sometimes they come into the bathroom. I'm like, okay, no, go close it, you know?
I have that problem.
A water bottle, a leash, they know those things by name, but
common things. Right.
Anything else, then they have to look.
We have a few questions. Let's see. What was the temperament test you mentioned, and can it be found online?
That is the Volhard temperament test, and it can be found online, yes.
Can you spell that?
Volhard.
Volhard, okay. And that can be found online. Okay.
Yeah, you can also type it in. A good thing to mention is that you want to find one that has, because they have a few different printout versions online, you just want to make sure you have the one that with the scoring, it tells you what you should be looking out for, because you want to know how to score it when you're doing the test.
Got it. Then there's another question. Do you find with dogs specifically, they get bored if not given a task or a duty? Also, are all breeds trainable? Yes. So first one, do you find with dogs specifically, they get bored if not given a task or duty? I know that answer.
Definitely, especially high working, high energy breeds. They need a job or a task, even if it's around the house, if they're not a service dog and stuff like that, they need something to do. So a lot of the time you want to give them a job within the household if they don't get to do a lot of outdoor things.
Even if their walks include wearing a backpack and they feel like it's their job to,
carry their stuff.
In the evening time, just
they
have to have they feel a purpose.
Yeah, you have to give. Every being has a purpose. You have to give them theirs.
If they don't know what it is, they'll make one up if you don't tell them what it is.
Exactly. Eating trash is not your purpose.
Right. Exactly. Right. I know we had been talking about this before, but I know with Enoch, with my dog, so we've gotten to the point where she picks up things. So now. If I drop laundry, because now in this Corona age, we're not going out that much. So it's all the tasks that I would want to have had her do out there are now kind of transferred inside. So what am I doing inside? I'm doing a lot of laundry. So, so as I do laundry, then let me just see who just came in so I can just mute. Got it. So as I'm doing laundry, I'm dropping laundry, so she knows how to pick it up. So now we're in a process of me teaching her how to pick up the laundry and hold it longer, which she can now do, but now carry it over to the hamper, or give it back to me. So my command for her to give me a piece of laundry that I dropped is to me, which I got from Game of Thrones because I love them. So it's to me, I use that, for her to bring it to me. So I agree with that whole boring thing. Are all breeds trainable?
Yes. So before I used to be a little picky about smaller dogs because they weren't always as willing to do the job as much as the bigger dogs because they're more from working lines and stuff like that. But we've actually trained a few Chihuahuas. There's one that actually stands out a lot. He stays on the wheelchair with her, but he's amazing, and he alerts to her and helps her in her daily life, and he's able to grab stuff for her and jump up and give it to her, even though he's super short, she doesn't have to bend down, and that's the main thing. So
we've also worked with a really incredibly smart corgi who was a service dog. So we've worked with a lot of smaller breeds that we learned that our way of thinking about that was entirely wrong.
Yeah, you just have to be able to communicate to them in the right way and fill their needs in the right way. So like Dalmatians, they need a lot of exercise. I've seen a few service dogs. There's not many because of how much you have to actually keep up with them, but every dog is trainable. So yeah.
And even an older dog too, because I know some people are taking well, like Coda, for example, was just a pet. And then she started doing tasks, when I needed her to, and then we started training her at age 2. So is there a specific age that you look for to start training, or are you saying it doesn't matter how old they are, they could be trained?
For regular training, any age. But when it comes to service dog training, you want to just watch out for their life expectancy, because you don't want to put all that work into a dog that's going to have to retire pretty soon. So that's the only thing that I would look out for that.
Right. Okay, so then we have another question. If you find your dog does react inappropriately to a stimulus, umbrella, touch, another dog, how do you work on correcting that behavior, if at all?
Well, it depends
On
on
each of
why
those things.
why they are reacting inappropriately and what it is that they're doing. That because inappropriately could mean a lot of things. So are they reacting out of fear? So then we're going to need to build confidence. Are they reacting out of just being unsocialized? Do we just need to be around it more at a distance and
So do more
build up to it?
I think the biggest thing is that, like, you don't want to correct every behavior. A big part of it is, half of it is confidence building, and then half of it is the correction. So you have to be able to tell them that this is all right, don't worry, let me just get you used to this a little bit, instead of like, hey, you're not supposed to do that, why are you having that reaction? Instead, it's like, hey, let me show you which reaction you should be having instead. But it works in so many ways. So if there's another dog that they're reacting inappropriately at, I would correct that instead, because I'm going to be like, hey, that's unacceptable, let me show you what to do instead. So it's like just adding both, but just
how would you correct that?
A dog acting inappropriately, normally
like towards another dog, for example, like they started to lunge and growl and bark, and this prey drive just kicks in. How would you stop that behavior?
Normally,
we keep an eye out before we get that close to be able to tell. You don't want to have to wait that long to correct.
So what would be the body language of the dog that you would note before that happened?
Well, you want prevention before intervention. So that was like the main thing for that. So like you watch the other dog walk up, and if they're super like excited and they're like way too excited, a lot of dogs react because they want to calm down the other dogs. Like, you're too much right now, you need to calm down. So, and to walk face forward to another dog. If you can walk diagonally, that's a good way to prevent any type of reaction, or just to make it a little less.
Would you give it like a little pull or something?
Normally we have like a slip lead on them, and we like to have it nice right behind their neck and behind their ears, because it hits the pressure points and it's right where you need it to be. So in that kind of reaction, even a 140-pound dog lunging at the end of his leash, we're able to correct him and have control of him, because we keep our arm nice and boxed, and we're able to hold him and control him from there, and do like light little tugs like that to let him know. I can put some pressure on the back and just let him know that I want him to sit down instead. Not even using vocal commands, I'm using all energy, body, and pressure to let him know what I want him to do instead. And I'm staying calm and staying in my spot. I'm not going to go crazy and turn around and try and do all these things. I'm going to be confident, calm, and let him know that he should be doing the same. So that's how we kind of
we have another question. How would you approach training a protective dog whose job is to protect the property, but is always barking at the neighbors outside?
I would get them socialized to the neighbors, do some like activities where they get to know the neighbor a little bit more, so that they're not seen as like an enemy or anything like that, because when they recognize the people, they're not going to have the same reaction.
Do they make eye contact? Do they talk to the dog? Or because it's sometimes about telling the neighbors how to interact with your dog, or how to just not interact at all. If they're like looking even in the eyes for too long and just talking in the dog's direction or something, it's viewed differently for the dog.
If they just ignore him, there's a likely chance that the dogs will just ignore them as well. So
gain the curiosity and the confidence enough to know that they're not anything to worry about or to alert you about.
But in the case that it's like the dogs there's a fence line and people are just walking, they're minding their own business and just, walking along like that, you can also call them and let them know, hey, come this way, leave it. And just consistency is the key. So whenever you see your neighbors coming home, make sure to go outside. Hey, relax, leave them alone, let's go. Just to let them, you can even have them just sit next to you and watch the neighbors pass, and then tell them they can release after, because you're letting them know the behavior you want. You're letting them know that you are saying it's okay and that they should think it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Good points. Good points. What do you do when the small dogs are unwilling? I have a stubborn Boston Terrier.
You have to find the right motivation. It's going to vary for every dog. Sometimes it's praise, sometimes it's belly rubs, sometimes it's a piece of ice. I'm so serious.
Sometimes it's just your movements. A lot of small dogs like to watch the feet, and a lot of people move their upper body more. So if you're able to get down to his level, or be a little more interactive with him with your whole body, it just depends on the dog. We'd have to see it, do it in person. But sometimes just your extra movements are able to get their attention and interact with them and engage them more.
Right.
So
it could be a sound, like a squeak of a toy. Could be the sight of a tennis ball that you carry in a treat bag all the time for when the dog has a lack of attention or motivation.
But I find with smaller dogs that you have to find what they, really want, because they need that extra motivation. So once you can that, use that and have that assist you.
Right. Right. Well, that concludes our questions. Very shortly, I think it's on April 18th, you two are teaching a brilliant class on how to teach your dog specific tasks and tricks, blah, blah, blah. So I knew I'd spit it out. And it's called Canis Animodorto alla Hamora, opening the mind of a dog. So yeah, that was really hard to say, especially after I couldn't even say tricks. So, but that's on April the 18th. It's 10 to 12 in the morning, and our online classes are $35. And there's so much to learn in that class. I'm very excited about it. I'm also very excited because everybody that is on the call today will get an additional $5 off that class if you sign up today. So on that note,